Welcome to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. Among the most fascinating aspects of marine biology are relationships between predatory fishes and their prey. The common predatory fishes in tropical waters use one or a combination of 4 basic methods to capture their prey. There are those, such as the barjack, which run down their prey, and some, like the barracuda, that stalk their quarry. And then there are others, like the scorpion fish, who capture prey from ambush, and still others, like the grouper, who appear to the prey to be non-aggressive until they attack. Recently, we were invited to observe research on predator-prey relationships among fishes being carried out aboard the Seaquarium, the collecting and research vessel of the Miami Seaquarium. We boarded that vessel here at the Miami Seaquarium in Florida and sailed eastward to a reef in the Bahamas, here, not far from Nassau. These are familiar waters to the vessel Seaquarium, since this is a favorite area for the collecting of exotic fish and for the conducting of marine research. With us today aboard the Seaquarium to continue his research into the behavior of predatory fishes and their prey is one of America's foremost marine biologists who has had over 20 years of specialized studies involving underwater observations. Dr. Ted Hobson of the National Marine Fisheries Service's Southwest Fisheries Center Laboratory at Tiburon, California.
To understand fishes, one must understand their feeding relationships. The needs to eat and to avoid being eaten are the major forces shaping not only their activity patterns, but also such basic anatomical features as size and shape. Most of the fishes in these clear tropical waters orient primarily by vision, and so are profoundly influenced by changes in underwater light at different times of the day and night. For this reason, it is best to consider daytime, nighttime, and twilight separately.
The Seaquarium is anchoring in 40 feet of water, and we look forward to our first dive. To begin with, we will examine predator-prey relationships by day. Captain Charles Bowie gives us the go-ahead. Our initial aim will be to seek out extensive coral reef areas where we expect to find concentrations of fish. We're entering the coral area now. As we progress, the corals here are becoming richer and more varied, and this is where we should encounter fish in great numbers. The grunts assembled before us are relatively inactive, as are so many of the schooling reef fishes. This schooling protects small reef fishes from predators, according to Dr. Hobson.
The staghorn coral we're passing now provides small reef fishes with excellent cover from predators. This is a primary means of defense. The other major means of defense, schooling, provides protection by confusing attackers. Now we're moving over the edge of the reef toward a coral bed in deeper water, where we expect to encounter some large predators. Ahead of us is a pack of barjacks among a school of tiny silversides and a solitary porkfish. The predatory jacks clearly are threatening the silversides. The silversides, however, are very elusive, and the jacks seem to have difficulty catching them during midday. They hunt best at dawn or dusk. When threatened, the tightly schooled silversides seem to confuse the predators by both darting in and out among one another and by presenting a bewildering array of flashing sides. The jacks find most midday attacks fruitless. We find that often, for even greater protection, some smaller fishes combine schooling with seeking shelter, as the silversides are doing at this cave. Silversides under threat often draw even more tightly together which further hinders predators that must single out individual prey. The confined space within the cave benefits the silver sides by restricting the predatory maneuvers of their attackers. During our passage through the cave to the other opening, the silver sides remain consistently abundant. One of the most efficient daylight predators here is the barracuda. This fish is very competent at stalking its prey. Its tactic is to cruise about slowly, watching for fish vulnerable to attack. This 5-footer seems to be actively hunting. It will keep alert for a concentration of fish, waiting for one to become vulnerable, as through carelessness. This barracuda is positioning itself near the prospective prey. Its attack, if it comes, will be a short, explosive charge. We'll now move back up to the shallower part of the reef to observe some other predator-prey relationships.
Still underwater at the reef near Nassau in the Bahamas, Dr. Ted Hobson and I continue to observe the tactics of predatory fish and their prey. We are continually impressed with how many of the small fish here depend on reef cover. When they are threatened by a predator like this barjack, they immediately vanish within the maze of reef crevices. An excellent example of how coral serves as protection is seen here at this isolated coral head where many small fish hover. Above the coral, feeding on small organisms, they quickly take cover and hide when danger approaches. They cannot know we are only spectators and respond to us as they would to large predators. They will remain hidden only so long as they feel threatened, because the business of finding food is as important to their survival as evading predators. When it appears safe, they once again emerge and resume their feeding.
Marlin and I now take a closer look at the small fishes feeding above the reef. Most are blue chromis, a species of damselfish. They have characteristics common to fishes feeding above the reef, deeply forked tails and streamlined bodies, allowing them to feed farther from cover because they can return rapidly if threatened.
One of many predators here, the barjack, incessantly patrols these waters. It too is built for speed. But whereas the damselfish use their speed to escape predators, the jacks use theirs primarily to catch prey.
Farther from cover, above the damselfish, is another species, even more streamlined, the bonnet mouth. Its increased streamlining permits it to streak back to shelter from even greater distances. Almost invisible atop this reef is a well-camouflaged venomous scorpionfish. Only mouth and eye betray its presence, as the rest of its body resembles the reef itself. Though immobile, it is constantly watchful for prey. It ambushes unwary prey that approach within short striking range. Another effective daytime predator is this leopard grouper. By appearing non-aggressive, it becomes part of the scene and eventually is fatally disregarded by small fishes that approach too closely. This trumpet fish stalks its prey, as do many long-bodied predators. Effective daytime hunting generally involves getting close to prey undetected. The trumpet fish often uses the body of another fish to mask its own movements and thus get closer to prey without being seen. Lying near this grouper, which is accepted by many prey as inoffensive, the trumpet fish is overlooked. By expanding its long snout, it can suddenly create a vacuum to inhale prey. Having sighted its prey, the trumpet fish peels off and gets into position for attack. Usually the prey is a small fish.
With our air supply nearly exhausted, we'll return to the boat and rest until it's time to observe some of the nighttime predator-prey relationships. With our daylight observations completed, we were now ready for our nighttime dive, from which we wouldn't surface again until after dawn. We are still anchored in the same place where we made our daytime dive. In the darkness, it is more difficult to get our bearings underwater. Before long, we've returned to the reef area we visited in daylight. At first, the reef appears deserted. We see no sign of the fishes that were here during the day. The initial impression of barrenness, however, is misleading if we take a closer look.
If we look closer, we find that many species are still here, but now they are at rest. An example is this colorful parrotfish. It gets its name from the beak-like mouth with which it feeds exclusively during the day on vegetation growing on the reef. Only a short distance away, we encounter, under our bright lights, a soapfish, one of the nocturnal predators. Nighttime predators tend to be dull-colored, and in dark water easily go unnoticed.
Having now become accustomed to the differences between looking for marine life in the darkness as opposed to during daylight, things we initially overlooked become visible. Just in front of me, at a large boulder-like coral head, is a tiny cardinal fish, another nocturnal species that comes into the open only at night. By day, it remains under cover.
The occasional tiny flashes we see are scattered silversides, darting about us as individuals. These fish, which had been schooling during the day, are now actively feeding. The tendency to school, so strong by day, is much weaker at night. Apparently, small fishes are less threatened in the darkness.
As we move across a small ledge, we look closely into many small crevices that could harbor resting daytime species. Although some of the species active during daytime rest at night in the open, by far the greater majority seek hiding places in the reef, and many protect themselves during this time in remarkable ways. One of the species that does this is the blue parrotfish, which encases itself in a covering of clear mucus secreted from a gland near the gills. The mucus may provide protection against predators that hunt by scent. We'll move along now to observe other nocturnal activity on the reef. Continuing our move along the darkened reef, we pass some sea fans which look like ferns but are actually invertebrate animals. It is during the night that the majority of invertebrates, such as this octopus, are most active. The octopus generally remains undercover by day. Invertebrates vary widely. They are simply animals without backbones, and they occur as a wide variety of life forms, both on land and here in the sea. This octopus appears to be actively hunting. It begins to spread its tentacles, and the membrane between them forms a sort of canopy. The canopy billows out to form what may be some kind of system for entrapping prey. Convulsive movements under the canopy seem to indicate that the octopus has captured something. If that is the case, it does not take long for the prey to be devoured. In just a short while, the hunt is over, and with the canopy collapsed, the octopus moves on.
Below, on the coral, an arrow crab actively feeds. Like most crustaceans, it leaves shelter only at night, probably because it is less vulnerable to predators after dark. But this safety is only relative, because crustaceans are the major prey of nocturnal fishes. The arrow crab uses its tiny pincers to pick up bits of food found in the coral.
Generally seen only at night, the basket star is quite mobile and hides in the reef by day. Its many snake-like arms gather minute organisms from the water. These food organisms, called plankton, are especially numerous at night, and many nocturnal reef animals, like the basket star, feed on this plankton.
Some forms of the larger plankton are attracted to our lights in great numbers whenever we pause very long in one place. As the silversides begin reforming their schools, we realize daylight is approaching. Then we see that grunts too have begun to reschool. The grunts, like the silversides, had abandoned their schools at nightfall. The first trace of daylight now becomes evident. In this early light, the silversides begin to amass near the cave in which they will spend the day, and now have become especially responsive to the slightest disturbance. In the half-light, their schools are an imperfect defense, and predators find them vulnerable. Jacks find direct attack most effective at this time. Under these low-light conditions, the silversides are at a disadvantage. They are fatally slow in responding to charges by predators that come out of the gloom.
Now, as the sun penetrates the surface, daylight conditions are returning to the reef. The school of grunts has reassembled in its daytime form, a further sign that the day-night cycle has been completed. With our observations finished, we can now return to the vessel Seaquarium.
While most of Dr. Hobson's work with fishes has been in the Pacific, he's finding that predator-prey relationships are very much the same here in the tropical Atlantic. His continuing studies are aiding fishery specialists in establishing effective management techniques.
If we are to preserve the Earth's wildlife, we must adopt effective management methods, and this requires knowledge of the needs and habits of the varied creatures that populate our planet. Among fishes, no area of understanding is more important than feeding relationships. As we have seen, the way fishes obtain food and deter predators often determines how they look, how they move, and where they swim. This knowledge is needed to predict how successfully fishes will adjust to the changes inflicted on them by our society. Accurate predictions based on extensive research are required if we are to select a course of action that is compatible with life in the wild kingdom.